So, if you are a chef, your absolute best tool is, a flawless, perfectly balanced knife.
Oh,
Uh,
absolutely. I mean, a dull knife is a chef's worst nightmare.
exactly. But if you are a master gardener, your most vital tool might actually be like the most flawed, pest-infested plant in your entire yard.
Which sounds completely backwards when you first hear it.
It really does.
Yeah.
So, welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are unpacking this really fascinating gardening log.
Yeah, it's super specific.
It is. It's a dispatch titled Notes on Gardening, Part 944, Cultivating Celosia for the Next Harvest. And it was written by an author named Ang, published today, actually July 3, 2026.
Fresh off the press.
Right. And our mission for this deep dive is to take this incredibly brief, it's just about 170 words, this diary entry about the Plume Celosia, technically known as Celosia-argentea, and discover the hidden tactical strategies buried inside it.
Because there's so much packed in there.
There really is. We're going to explore how this humble little plant teaches us about strategic sacrifice, interpreting invisible data, and, well, the bizarre collision between nature's timeline and our cultural calendars.
I love that setup. Because, getting to part 944 of a gardening journal,
Yeah, that's a lot of notes.
right, it means the author is way past the basics of just putting seeds in dirt and hoping for the best.
Right, they aren't just reading the back of the seed packet anymore.
Exactly. At this stage, the gardener is engaged in a highly complex, long-term dialogue with an ecosystem.
A dialogue, I like that.
Yeah, and the subject of this particular entry, the Plume Celosia, it acts as this brilliant lens to see exactly how that dialogue works on a really microscopic level.
Well, the entry reveals right away that the Plume Celosia has been Ang's go-to species for gardening experiments.
Which is an interesting choice.
It is. The explicit goal mentioned in the text is for the gardener to hone their skills and evaluate different microclimates.
Ah, microclimates. That's a crucial word there.
Yeah, so let's dig into that term because when someone looks at a backyard, they usually just see one climate, right? Like it's sunny or it's in a specific hardiness zone.
Sure, they look at the zip code and figure they know what will grow.
Right. But Ang is evaluating microclimates, plural, within a single space.
Yeah, because a single garden is actually a patchwork of dozens of invisible, highly distinct weather systems.
Wait, dozens, just in one yard.
Oh, easily. I mean, the ambient temperature might be, say, 70 degrees, but the soil tucked against a southern-facing brick wall is absorbing and radiating heat entirely differently than the soil just 10 feet away under the canopy of an oak tree.
Oh, because the brick holds the heat?
Exactly. That brick wall acts as a thermal mass. It creates a little pocket of warmth that might last well into the night.
Uh-huh.
And then you have, wind eddies created by the corner of a shed, or even microscopic humidity domes forming in just a slight depression in the lawn.
Wow, okay. So a master gardener cannot just guess how a prized, delicate crop will fare in one of those invisible pockets.
No, you can't. It's too risky.
You need a way to test that invisible environment before risking your primary harvest. It kind of makes me think of an IT beta tester.
Oh, that's a good comparison.
Yeah, like you never roll out the brand new mission critical software to the entire company on day one, right?
No, that would be a disaster.
You deploy it to a small, isolated test group, your beta testers, to see if the system crashes under pressure. So the Plume Celosia is basically Ang's botanical beta tester.
That beta tester analogy is perfect, actually, because their primary job is to encounter the bugs and the system failures.
Right, to find what's wrong.
Exactly. By planting the celosia in a new spot, Ang is forcing the plant to interact with the hidden variables of that microclimate.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, like does it wilt mid-afternoon? Are the leaves scorching from the reflected heat off that brick wall we talked about? The plant is actively gathering and communicating data through its biological responses.
Well, wait, let me push back on that for a second.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because if the text explicitly notes that the celosia has less ideal growth habits and tends to struggle, aren't you just proving the soil or the microclimate is bad?
That's what you would think.
Yeah, like why wouldn't you use a hardy plant that you know will survive anywhere to build up your confidence in that spot?
Well, because a practically indestructible weed, it would survive a harsh microclimate, sure, but it wouldn't tell you anything useful about the subtleties of the soil moisture or the light intensity.
Oh, because it just powers through it.
Exactly. It would just stubbornly live, completely masking the data. You need a sensitive instrument. You need a plant that complains visibly and quickly.
Wow. Okay, that totally flips it.
Right. Its struggle isn't a failure of the garden space. The struggle is the successful transmission of vital environmental information.
So the plant's vulnerability is what makes it a highly calibrated sensor.
Yes, the vulnerability is the tool itself.
And a plant that visibly complains in a harsh microclimate isn't just giving the gardener weather data. That very weakness actually unlocks a completely different tactical application in Eng's garden.
Oh, this is my favorite part of the text.
Same here, because the entry notes that the Celosia's susceptibility to pests actually makes it a highly suitable trap plant.
Which is a profound shift in how we usually approach a problem in gardening.
How so?
Well, when a plant is stressed by a microclimate, it doesn't just look sad, its biology changes.
Like internally.
Yeah. Stress plants often emit specific volatile organic compounds, basically. Chemical distress signals into the air.
Like an SOS.
Exactly like an SOS. And pests, like aphids or whiteflies, are chemically drawn to those specific signals, far more than they are drawn to a healthy, robust plant nearby.
Oh, wow. So Eng observes that the celosia becomes a pest magnet, which obviously makes it a terrible choice for a main crop.
Terrible main crop, yes.
But a brilliant decoy. It's essentially a cybersecurity honeypot?
Honeypot, I love that.
Yeah, because in the tech world, if you want to protect a valuable server, you set up a fake, highly vulnerable server right next to it.
So the hackers go there instead.
Exactly. The hackers swarm the fake target, keeping your real data safe and allowing you to study their methods. The celosia is a botanical honeypot.
That is spot on. Its entire job description is to look appetizing, broadcast those distress signals, and just take the hit so the VIP crops can thrive untouched.
And notice the mindset required to execute that strategy.
It's totally different.
Yeah. Normally when we identify a pest-infested plant, our first instinct is like eradication. We want to spray it, cure it, or just rip it out by the roots because we view the flaw as an enemy to be destroyed.
But Eng flips that entirely. The gardener weaponizes the plant's flaw, using it to dictate the movement of the pests within the ecosystem.
So you aren't eliminating the insects.
Right. Which is often an impossible and ecologically damaging goal anyway.
Mm.
You are managing their behavior by offering them a sacrificial feast.
But isn't it entirely counterintuitive to cultivate a living thing? You know, water it, nurture it, with the specific intentional hope that it gets absolutely devoured by a swarm of insects.
It sounds kind of cruel when you say it like that.
It does. I mean, that requires someone who presumably loves their garden to completely detach from the survival of a plant they are actively caring for.
It demands a massive shift in perspective, moving from a micro view to a macro view.
The macro view.
Yeah. A novice looks at an individual plant and wants it to be pristine. A master gardener looks at the entire interconnected ecosystem.
Ah, I see.
The value of the celosia for Eng isn't in its individual aesthetic perfection. Its value is entirely in its ecological function. It is strategic vulnerability at its finest.
So you have to let go of the ego of having a flawless garden.
Yes, you have to let that go to maintain the health of the broader system.
That concept of control, or I guess the limits of it, brings us to a really fascinating tension woven right into the middle of this journal entry.
The part about the ground cover?
Yes, because on one hand, Eng is acting as the grand architect, utilizing the celosia as this highly tactical decoy to manipulate insect populations. There is intense, deliberate control happening there.
Very calculated.
But on the other hand, the author admits to a real frustration. Eng writes, "I also can't seem to find the right dwarf cultivar that is far better suited as a ground cover."
Yeah, the hunt for the elusive cultivar perfectly illustrates that human desire to engineer nature to our exact specifications.
Because a cultivar isn't just a natural occurrence, right?
A cultivar isn't just a random plant you find out in the woods. It's a plant that has been selectively bred, often over generations, for a highly specific, desirable trait.
Got it. And in this case, Eng wants a dwarf variety.
Exactly. The gardener wants human control over the physical architecture of the plant so it can fulfill a specific design role as ground cover.
And right next to that expression of human engineering, Eng casually notes that dormant seeds sprout from time to time.
The contrast there is amazing.
It really is. There is an active hunt in the commercial marketplace for a genetically curated ground cover, while simultaneously the wild version of the plant is just popping up in the dirt, unprompted.
Unprompted and unbothered. It perfectly captures the tension between the planned, orderly architecture of human gardening and the chaotic, resilient survival drive of the plant itself.
It just does what it wants.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
The celosia isn't waiting for the gardener's master plan or trip to the nursery. It drops seeds into the soil during past seasons. Those seeds went dormant to survive the winter or a dry spell.
And now they're germinating based entirely on their own biological clocks and environmental triggers.
Yes.
So if the dormant seeds are just randomly sprouting whenever they hit the right temperature or moisture level, completely defying the gardener's grand design, who is really running this microclimate experiment.
That is the humbling reality of agriculture right there.
Yeah.
We like to think we are the dictators of the garden, but Eng's note acknowledges that we are really just negotiators.
Negotiate.
Yeah, you can set up the trap crops, map the thermal masses, and hunt for specific cultivars, but the plant always retains its own agency.
Those sprouting dormant seeds prove that the ecosystem has its own memory.
Beautifully said. The gardener is guiding a force that ultimately operates on its own terms.
And because the specific dwarf cultivar isn't currently available, Eng can't force the issue. The grand plan has to pivot to a waiting game.
Which introduces a whole new element to the entry.
It really does. And what is so wild about this 170-word text is that this waiting game relies on two completely different types of cycles colliding: the biological timeline of the plant itself and the massive macroeconomic timeline of human culture.
Two very different scales of time.
Totally. Let's look at the biological cycle first. Eng outlines an immediate action plan, writing, "For the time being, let's keep these two plants growing until we can harvest their seeds." But the crucial detail is earlier in the sentence, where Eng specifies harvesting seeds from the spent flowers merely for future propagation.
Ah, the spent flower. The concept of the spent flower is so rich with irony.
Why is that?
Because in our traditional aesthetic hierarchy, a flower's moment of greatest value is when it is in full, vibrant bloom.
Right, it's colorful, it attracts pollinators, it's visually striking.
Exactly. And when it becomes spent, when the petals wither, turn brown, and it goes to seed, most casual gardeners consider its usefulness over.
They just chop it off.
Yeah, they deadhead it to make the plant look neater, or they toss it in the compost bin.
They view the aesthetic death as the end of the line. But for a pragmatic tactician like Eng, that moment of greatest visual decline is actually the moment of absolute peak biological value.
Because that dried, withered head is the only thing holding the genetic future of the plant.
Right.
The aesthetic death is the biological birth. Eng is literally keeping these two specific plants alive, not to enjoy their beauty, but specifically to wait for them to decline so the genetic material can be secured.
But wait, if Eng is already successfully harvesting seeds from these spent flowers for future propagation, why is there a secondary backup plan?
What do you mean?
Well, why right? Until then, we'll just have to wait for the next Lunar Chinese New Year, when nurseries and plant centers will be flooded with a sea of vibrant red and yellow celosia. Like, if you have your own seeds, why rely on a massive cultural holiday to flood the market with fresh live specimens? Doesn't that expose a limit to DIY gardening?
Oh, it completely exposes those limits, and Eng is highly attuned to that vulnerability.
Okay, so why can't you just keep using your own seeds forever?
Because propagating your own seeds from your own backyard is fantastic for maintaining a lineage, but it creates a closed loop.
Right.
Over several generations, if you only breed from the exact same two parent plants, you experience genetic bottlenecking.
Ah, okay, the gene pool gets too small.
Exactly. The plants might become weaker, or you might realize the genetics you currently possess simply lack the traits you desperately want, like that elusive dwarf architecture. You cannot magically engineer a dwarf trait from tall plants just by saving their seeds.
You eventually have to go back to the broader gene pool to find new physical expressions of the plant.
Exactly. And the most pragmatic way to access the widest possible gene pool isn't to scour every tiny local nursery in the middle of summer.
No, that would take forever.
It is to piggyback on a massive cultural and economic event.
The Lunar New Year.
Yes, the Plume Celosia, particularly the vibrant red and yellow varieties, holds massive cultural significance for the Lunar New Year. It acts as a symbol of good fortune and prosperity.
Which means huge demand.
Exactly. The sheer volume of consumer demand for that holiday forces the commercial nursery industry to scale up their production astronomically.
It's like needing a highly specific niche piece of electronics for a hobby and realizing your best statistical chance of finding the perfect version is just waiting for the massive production run that happens right before the holiday shopping season.
That's a perfect way to look at it.
Yeah.
You are letting global supply chains do the heavy lifting of generating variety.
Eng knows that this holiday will produce a literal sea of variations in the plant centers.
Out of tens of thousands of commercially grown celosia flooding the market, the statistical odds of finding a live specimen that naturally exhibits that shorter ground cover habit just skyrocket.
That is so smart. The gardener moves from the quiet, solitary focus on a single spent flower in a backyard microclimate straight into leveraging the overwhelming momentum of global agricultural markets.
It perfectly illustrates how modern cultivation isn't just about communing with dirt.
Right, it's not just a purely natural endeavor anymore.
No, it is this bizarre hybrid of natural intuition and total reliance on commercial supply chains dictated by cultural demands. The gardener is forced to synchronize their backyard experiment with a holiday calendar just to restock their tactical supplies.
It showcases the incredible resourcefulness required at part 944 of a gardening journey.
You really use whatever systems are available to you.
Whether that's the chemical distress signals of a trap plant, the biological ticking clock of a dying flower, or the commercial machinery of the Lunar New Year.
It's brilliant strategy from top to bottom.
It really is. What started as a simple 170-word diary entry took us on a massive journey through the hidden mechanics of horticulture.
We really covered a lot of ground, pun intended.
Nice one. We explored how a plant's physical struggle can map out invisible microclimates, turning weakness into data. We saw how a vulnerability to pests can be weaponized to create a biological honeypot, protecting the broader ecosystem.
And we examined the eternal tension between human cultivation, the hunt for the perfect cultivar, and the unpredictable resilience of dormant natural surprises.
And finally, we saw how solitary backyard propagation eventually has to intersect with the colorful, overwhelming market forces of global cultural events.
It's all connected.
It is. And I think the core value you gain today goes far beyond figuring out what to plant next spring. It is a fundamental shift in how we view utility and flaw.
Right.
We spend so much of our energy trying to engineer vulnerabilities out of our systems, expecting our tools to be flawless. But Ang's notes remind us that sometimes the most flawed, vulnerable, pest-prone assets we have are actually our best diagnostic instruments.
The flaws aren't always things to be fixed. Sometimes they are features to be strategically deployed.
It forces us to entirely reevaluate what we throw away, what we consider spent, and what we consider useful in our own environments.
I know I'll be looking at my yard differently now.
Same here. Think about a project you've abandoned recently, or a habit you consider a complete failure. If a plant's greatest strategic value to a master gardener lies in its vulnerability as a trap, and its absolute peak utility is found in its end-of-life stage as a spent flower, how might we rethink the concept of failure in our own lives?
That's a great question to ask yourself.
Are there failed projects in your life right now that aren't actually failures, but are acting as trap plants, absorbing the stress, shielding your main goals, and secretly dropping dormant seeds for your future success? Keep an eye out for those dormant seeds. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.